When I became chair of the AEF, I called for a new approach to environmental issues. I explained that the established environment groups are too preoccupied with headlines and publicity stunts and I suppose mostly emotional issues, which I think is really dangerous, rather than the hard work of finding enduring solutions. And that is a serious problem with our environmental groups. I think they did a great job making the world aware of the problems. I think they're failing spectacularly in guiding the world as to how it might deal with the problems. On behalf of the AEF, I recently called for a significant expansion of the federal government's inquiry into nuclear energy, as the current review will not produce a sufficiently accurate or useful comparison between the various energy generating options. We need to know what is the start to finish likely cost of all current forms of electricity generation. And that's a complex thing to do, but it has to be done. Thinking about water, wastewater recycling is inevitable. I supported the Yes for Toowoomba in a sense. I certainly didn't want to push it down their throats. I felt there was a bit of an effort to do that, and I think that was a shame, and I think that may have caused part of the backlash there at Toowoomba. Toowoomba could have been the first Australian city to recycle sewage as drinking water. I think it would have been wonderful for a town like that to show the big cities that they can think it through better than us. That didn't happen, but it's part of the process, and that's fine. Sydney has long since outgrown its water supply. While a piddling amount of water is recycled in that northwestern sector, overall Sydney simply can't supply water for another 1 million people. It just doesn't have it. Population. Now, I believe that population is at the heart and soul of conservation and environmental type issues. Surely we need better committees controlling population distribution. We need to look for sexy areas for people to live where they can get a job, have fun, get water without destroying the local environment. And that's the challenge, not just send them off into the bush somewhere. It's not happening at the moment. Population policy at all levels has a huge impact on our environment, and most of the impact is far more negative than it could be. Over the last 200 years, 17 mammal species are thought to have become extinct in Australia. Less than 25 species have become extinct in the rest of the world during that period. Those are still misleading figures, by the way, because those vulnerable species that we did in 200 years were done a lot more than 200 years ago, everybody else. Nonetheless, Australian mammalian extinctions represent 40% of the world total since 1800. About 100 species of vascular plants, that's just sort of modern plants, have also become extinct in Australia over that period, as against a total of 140 in continental USA, Europe and Southern Africa. We often don't know best. In so many areas, nature is adapting, coping, inventing and moving on. Conservationists, by and large, can't cope with this and seem to be in denial. Let me give you examples. These are little examples, but they're little examples of something that I believe is a fundamental tidal wave that is sweeping the planet. Inside my house, geckos colonise areas on walls and eat house insects. And I'm not in the tropics where these things are everywhere. And yes, we did create gaps in the walls for them to come in. Huntsman spiders also colonise our walls and eat insects. Perrin's tree frogs, I've said colonise our bathroom. They're in the loo. Small insectivorous birds, including pardalotes, have learned to hunt insects in the dead of night around our dichroic garden lights. 2 o'clock in the morning, if we've got a party going on for a while, if the red wine holds, 2 o'clock in the morning, we'll see them hovering around the lights, eating moths that are attracted to garden lights. We have finches eating our, and I'd like to point out, intentionally planted garden weeds. Double bars and red-headed finches eat panic veld grass and guinea grass. Sometimes the best you can do is to achieve a less worse outcome. When I realised that agricultural and veterinary chemicals were creating serious environmental and human health issues in Australia, I approached the then Minister for Primary Industry, Simon Crean, to set up a national group to better manage chemicals in Australia. He did set that group up. It's now the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority. We did manage to get rid of the organochlorines, DDT and its relatives. Now, by the way, I accept that in Australia you would get rid of them because they have been proven to be stored in body fats in humans. Right? I don't want those things in our bodies. But if I was living in Africa, particularly in the malaria zones, of course you'd say, well, we might have to put up with it a while till we find a better way of beating the mosquitoes that spread malaria. But in Australia we don't want that here. The days of conservationists being at war with governments, farmers, developers, the fishing industry, etc. must end. The battle to save the world will be won by cooperation and collaboration, not by protests.